If you are here at 3 in the morning, there is a good chance the unknown brought you here. Not the obvious unknown, like not knowing what will happen tomorrow at work or if that person is going to text you back, but the deeper unknown, the existential unknown, that sudden visceral awareness that you know nothing. You don't know who you truly are. You don't know why you are here. You don't know what happens after death. You don't know if the choices you're making are the right ones. You don't know if this path you've chosen will lead where you hope it does. You don't know if the people you love will stay. You don't know if you're going to make it. You don't know if it's worth it. And that not knowing, that vast ocean of uncertainty that opens up when you finally get quiet enough, when the distractions of the day finally cease and you are left alone with your thoughts, it terrifies you. Because we spend our entire lives trying to know, trying to be sure, trying to build elaborate mental maps that tell us exactly where we are, where we're going, and what to expect around every corner. We create the illusion that we understand, that we have control, that we know what we are doing. And when those maps fail, when reality refuses to follow our carefully planned script, when the unknown reveals itself in all its vastness, we panic. Because that whole edifice of certainty, that carefully constructed structure of I know how life works, it crumbles. And you are left there at 3 in the morning, confronting the raw truth that you know nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because the ego, the conditioned mind, was built on the illusion of knowledge, on the illusion of control, on the illusion that if you just think enough, plan enough, prepare enough, you can eliminate uncertainty. You can make life safe. You can know what comes next. And the unknown destroys that illusion completely, brutally, without asking for permission. But what if you are asking the wrong question? What if the question isn't, how do I make the unknown known? But rather, how do I learn to dance with the mystery? What if the problem isn't the unknown itself, but your resistance to it? Your desperate need to turn it into something known before you allow yourself to live. If you are awake right now feeling lost, without a map, without a compass, unsure of your next step, not knowing if you're doing everything wrong or if you are exactly where you need to be, this video is for you. Because maybe the unknown isn't your enemy. Maybe it is the only real door to something new. Maybe it is the only space where true transformation can happen. There is a truth about human life that few really absorb, that few allow to penetrate beyond the intellectual level. You never knew what you were doing. Never. Not once. Not when you were 20 and thought you had it all figured out. Not when you got that job that seemed perfect. Not when you got into that relationship certain it was the one. Not when you made that big decision with absolute confidence. Not when everything seemed perfectly aligned. You were always navigating in the dark, always doing your best with drastically limited information, always faking a confidence you didn't fully feel, always operating based on assumptions you didn't even realize you were making. And it worked. Or at least it worked enough to get you here, to this moment, to this early morning hour, when the illusions finally fall away. But at 3 a.m., when psychological defenses are low, when the ego can no longer maintain the elaborate performance of "I know what I'm doing," when the mask of competence and certainty finally slips, the truth emerges. Raw, naked, undeniable. You don't know. You never knew. And you probably never will know completely. Not because you are deficient, not because you aren't smart enough, not because you aren't doing enough, but because complete knowledge is impossible. Total control is an illusion the mind creates to feel safe in a fundamentally uncertain universe. And this is not a failure. This is not evidence of inadequacy.
Life is not a math equation where if you just collect enough data and apply the correct logic, you will arrive at the definitive answer. Life is not a puzzle where all the pieces eventually fit into a recognizable pattern if you are just persistent enough. Life is a mystery. It always has been. It always will be. And a mystery, by definition, cannot be solved. A mystery can only be lived, experienced, inhabited, danced. And the ego hates this. The ego was built through years of conditioning to create a sense of control, of predictability, of "I understand what is happening here and I know how to handle it." Because without that illusion, without that fundamental sense that you know and can navigate life with some safety, the ego thinks it will die, that it will dissolve, that it will cease to exist. And you know what? It's right, it will die. Or at least the rigid, controlling, certainty-based version of it will have to dissolve. Because you cannot control what you fundamentally cannot know. And you cannot know the future. Not really. You cannot know all the infinite variables that will determine how things unfold. You cannot map a territory that is constantly changing, reshaping itself, presenting new features at every moment. And so you have a fundamental choice. A choice that defines how you will live the rest of your life. You can spend your days, your years, your remaining decades trying to make the unknown known, trying to create more certainty where certainty cannot exist, trying to build more security where security is fundamentally impossible, trying to map a territory that refuses to be mapped, fighting against the fundamental nature of reality because you cannot accept that you cannot know everything. Or you can let go. You can surrender this desperate need for certainty. You can accept deeply, viscerally, not just intellectually, but at the level of the body, of your being, that you do not know, that you will never know completely. And that not only is that okay, but there is something deeply liberating, deeply alive, deeply true in not knowing. Because when you know, or think you know, or pretend you know, you are trapped, completely trapped, trapped in the known, trapped in established patterns, trapped in doing the same things the same way because that's how it's done, because that's how it's always worked, because I know the result, so why risk something different? You become a machine executing a program, repeating loops, living on autopilot, making the same choices you've always made, having the same experiences you've always had, being the same person you've always been, and calling that a life, calling that safety, calling that wisdom. But it isn't wisdom. It is a prison. A self-imposed prison, certainly, but a prison nonetheless. Because when you don't allow for the unknown, when you insist on knowing before moving, when you demand certainty before acting, you eliminate possibility. You kill spontaneity. You suffocate life's ability to surprise you, to transform you, to take you places you could have never imagined with your limited mind. But when you don't know, when you are genuinely in the unknown, when you have let go of the need to have it all planned out, you are free, radically free. Free to respond in new ways to situations that seem familiar, free to surprise yourself with capabilities you didn't know you had, free to discover aspects of yourself that only emerge when you stop trying to control who you are based on who you think you should be. And I know what you're thinking. The rational mind is protesting right now, but I need to know. I need to have some control. I can't just live in total chaos. I need to be able to plan, to predict at least a few things, to prepare for what might come. How am I going to make decisions? How am I going to choose a direction? How am I going to live if I know nothing? And yes, of course, you are right. You need some structure. You need some sense of direction. You need to make practical decisions about how to live your life day to day. But there is a massive difference between having a flexible plan, between having a general sense of direction, between making sensible preparations and living with the illusion that you control the outcome. There is a difference between healthy preparation that honors uncertainty and the neurotic attempt to eliminate all of the unknown from your life before allowing yourself to live.
Because here is what happens when you try to eliminate the unknown completely. When you try to make life completely predictable, completely safe, completely controlled, completely mapped, you kill possibility. You kill growth. You kill transformation. You kill life's ability to be surprising, to be magical, to be something beyond what your small mind can conceive. You create a small life, a predictable life, a life where you know what will happen tomorrow because it will be exactly like today, which was exactly like yesterday. A safe life, perhaps, in the most superficial sense, but small, so small. Because you are only willing to go where your map permits, only willing to experience what you already know the outlines of, only willing to be who you already know how to be. And you live decades like this, decades of safety, decades of predictability, decades of the absence of real surprise. And then one day, you wake up, maybe at 40, maybe at 60, maybe on your deathbed, and realize that you never really lived. You survived. You executed. You followed the script, but you were never truly present for the wild and unpredictable mystery of being alive. And maybe you have lived like this for too long. Maybe that is exactly why you're awake at 3 in the morning right now. Not because something external is wrong, not because you made a wrong decision, but because something deep within you, something that cannot be silenced indefinitely, is asking for more. It is asking to leave the prison of the known. It is asking to enter the wild territory where maps don't work and certainties dissolve
And that is scary. It should scare you. Because when you enter the real unknown, not the domesticated unknown you allow in controlled doses, but the genuine unknown where you have no idea what comes next, you cannot take your old certainties with you. You cannot take the hardened version of you that developed over decades of trying to know everything. You have to go naked, vulnerable, stripped of all armor of knowledge and control, completely unknowing. And the ego panics at this because the ego is a structure built on knowing, on having a fixed identity, on knowing who I am and how I worked and what I do in situation X. But in the genuine unknown, all those structures are irrelevant. You don't know who you are because you have never been here before. You don't know how you function in this context because this context is new. You don't know what to do because there is no precedent. If this is resonating, if something deep inside you recognizes this truth, but also feels terror at it, if you're torn between the desire to remain safe in the known and the call to enter the unknown, leave a comment. Just write unknown. Because acknowledging that you are in the unknown, that we are all constantly in the unknown, pretending we know, is the first step to stop fighting against reality and start dancing with it. And knowing that there are others doing this dance, others letting go of certainties, others entering the mystery. Sometimes that's all we need to take the next step. So let's talk about what the unknown really is. Let's look directly at this space we try so hard to avoid, because it is not what the conditioned mind paints it to be. It is not a terrifying void where you get lost and never find yourself again. It is not an abyss that devours you. It is not the end of everything. The unknown is a field of infinite possibility.
It is a matrix of pure potential. It is the space where everything that does not yet exist can come into existence. Think, really think about every major change in your life so far. Every genuine moment of transformation. Every moment where you truly grew, where something fundamental in you changed, where you became something new instead of just a variation of what you always were. Those moments didn't happen in the safe comfort of the known, did they? They didn't happen when you were following an established routine, doing exactly what you always did, executing patterns you had completely mastered, being the predictable version of yourself you always were. They happened when you were forced, through circumstance, through crisis, through loss, through the collapse of old structures, or when you consciously chose to enter completely unknown territory, when you had no instruction manual. When you had no guarantees, when you had no reliable precedents to follow, when all you had was the willingness, perhaps reluctant, to figure it out as you went along. And yes, it was deeply uncomfortable. Yes, there were moments, perhaps many moments, of piercing doubt, of fear that made you question if you should have stayed where you were, of desperately wanting to run back to the familiar, even if the familiar was a prison, because at least it was a known prison. At least you knew how to survive there. But you stayed. By choice or by necessity, you stayed in the unknown. You navigated the uncertainty. You moved without a map. You made decisions without certainty that they were right. You trusted in something deeper than mental knowledge. And on the other side of that uncertainty, on the other side of that prolonged not knowing, on the other side of weeks or months or years of having no idea if you were doing the right thing, you found something. You found a version of yourself that didn't exist before entering the unknown. You discovered strength you didn't know you had, that you couldn't have developed in the safety of the known. You accessed wisdom that only comes from having to trust intuition when mental knowledge fails. You developed resilience that is only born from having to get up repeatedly without knowing if it will work this time. Because here is the deep secret about the unknown. It is where you become, not where you get lost as the ego convinces you. The known is where you repeat. The known is where you execute established programs. The known is where you are a fixed, frozen version of yourself doing the same things in the same ways because you've already proven it works, so why change? The known is safe because you already know all the moves. You've already mapped the entire territory. You already know how to navigate every situation that is likely to arise, but there is no true growth there. There is no real discovery. There is no possibility of becoming something radically different, something you didn't even know you could be. The unknown is where alchemy happens. It is the crucible of real transformation occurs. It is where you don't know who you are, so you have to discover it in real time, moment by moment. It is where old patterns don't work, so you have to improvise, create new ones, uncover capabilities that were dormant. It is where comfortable certainties dissolve, so you have to trust in something deeper, truer, more alive than accumulated knowledge. And this deeper something isn't mystical in the supernatural sense. It is intuition. It is bodily wisdom. It is intelligence that doesn't come from accumulated experience cataloged by the mind, but from direct, unmediated connection with the pure present. It is a knowing that the rational mind cannot access because it is too busy trying to make the present fit into old patterns, trying to categorize new experience into old boxes. But when you are genuinely in the unknown, when you have released the need to know mentally, to control cognitively, to predict through analysis, this deeper, older, wiser intelligence emerges. Not as a loud, clear voice telling you exactly the steps to follow with detailed instructions, but as a feeling, as a bodily knowing, as a subtle pull in a specific direction that you can't explain rationally, but that feels deeply right. It's like knowing you need to make that call even without a logical reason. Like knowing you need to leave that job even without a plan B. Like knowing you need to stay in this difficult situation even when everything in you wants to run. Like knowing you need to walk away right now even if it doesn't make sense. It is knowing without explanation. Certainty without evidence. direction without a map. And trusting this wisdom that doesn't pass through the filter of the rational mind, that cannot be justified with logic, that has no clear precedence, is one of the bravest acts you can perform, because it goes against everything you've been taught since childhood. You were taught to think before acting, to plan meticulously, to analyze all variables, to base decisions on concrete data, on verifiable logic, on established precedents. You were taught that trusting intuition without rational backup is irresponsible, that following a feeling without being able to explain it is childish,
that making decisions without complete analysis is reckless. And for trivial decisions, for everyday choices without much at stake, maybe that is sensible. But for real navigation of the unknown, for moments where you truly do not have enough data, where analysis only takes you so far, trying to force a decision purely through reason is limiting. Often, it is paralyzing. Because in the true unknown, there is not enough data for complete analysis. There are no perfectly analogous precedents. Logic can eliminate some obviously bad options, but rarely points to a clear answer. And you can get stuck indefinitely in analysis, always waiting for one more piece of information, always looking for a certainty that will never come. Or you can, at some point, leap, trust, allow something bigger than your limited mind, something connected to a vaster intelligence you don't fully understand, to guide you. And this is terrifying for the ego, because the ego wants to be in charge. It wants to be the one who knows, who decides based on reason, who maintains control through mental comprehension. But in the genuine unknown, the ego has to bow. It has to admit its limitations. It has to recognize that there are ways of knowing that do not pass through it. It has to let go of the wheel and trust that there is something that knows, even when you, the mental identity, do not know. And when you do this, when you really do this, when you act based on deep intuition, even without being able to fully justify it, even without guarantees, something that feels like magic often happens. Not magic in the supernatural sense of violating natural laws, but magic in the sense of synchronicity, of things aligning in ways you could not mentally orchestrate it, of doors opening that you didn't know existed. The right people show up at the exact moment. Opportunities arise from completely unexpected places. Solutions to problems that seemed insurmountable emerge spontaneously. Paths reveal themselves that weren't there when you were planning mentally, and you ask yourself, how did this happen? How did things fit together so perfectly when I wasn't trying to control everything? And you can call it luck, you can call it coincidence, you can call it whatever label makes your rational mind comfortable. But people who have learned to trust the unknown, who have learned to move even without knowing completely, who have learned to follow deep intuition even against surface logic, these people experience this regularly. not because they are special or favored by the universe, but because they stop trying to control everything with a limited mind and allowed a vaster intelligence, call it intuition, life, the universe, God, whatever resonates, to flow through them instead of trying to force everything to follow mentally constructed plans. So, the unknown is not empty. That is the great lie the ego tells. The unknown is not absence, it is not nothingness, it is not a vacuum where you simply fall infinitely without ever touching ground. The unknown is full, incredibly, abundantly full of possibilities your conscious mind cannot conceive because it is limited by past experience. Full of potential futures that can only exist if you let go of certainties about how things should be based on how they were. Full of life's infinite capacity to create, to surprise, to reorganize itself in ways that defy all expectation and logic. And you can spend your whole life trying to avoid this unknown full of possibility, trying to create ever larger bubbles of certainty, trying to make more and more of life predictable, controlled, mapped, trying to eliminate mystery and surprise because they threaten your illusion of control. Or you can recognize, finally, deeply, that life has always been unknown, that you've always been navigating mystery just pretending you had reliable maps, and maybe, just maybe, this isn't a bug that needs to be fixed. It is a feature. It isn't a problem to be solved. It is the fundamental, beautiful, terrifying, and liberating nature of being alive.
But you might still be asking, how do I actually live in the unknown without collapsing? How do I function day to day when I accept that I know nothing? Because it's one thing to speak philosophically, poetically, about accepting mystery and letting go of control. It is another thing entirely to wake up Monday morning with real decisions to make, practical problems to solve, a concrete life to live. Without knowing what to do, how do you really navigate this? How do you not get paralyzed? How do you not lose yourself completely? Because the real fear, the fear that keeps people trapped in the known, even when it is suffocating them, is that if they let go of the need to know, if they enter the unknown completely, they will collapse. They will be unable to function. They will make terrible choices. They will destroy themselves. So let's be practical for a moment. First, you need to distinguish between two fundamentally different types of not knowing. There is the not knowing that comes from a lack of information you could reasonably have. Like not knowing because you didn't do basic research, didn't ask obvious questions, didn't collect data that is readily available, didn't do the fundamental homework. This type of not knowing you can and should address. There is no wisdom in avoidable ignorance. Do your research. Ask questions. Collect available information. Learn what is learnable. Be responsible.
But then, and here is the critical part, there is the fundamental not knowing that remains even after you have done all possible research, collected all available information, analyzed everything that can be analyzed. The not knowing about how things will actually unfold. The not knowing if you will succeed. The not knowing about the long-term consequences of your choices. The not knowing what comes after every decision you take. The not knowing if you are doing the right thing. This not knowing you cannot eliminate. No matter how much you think, analyze, plan, this not knowing is fundamental to the human experience of being in time, making choices without knowing the future. And trying to eliminate this fundamental not knowing, trying to achieve certainty about things that are fundamentally uncertain, only creates paralyzing anxiety. It creates perpetual analysis that never leads to action because there is never enough information for complete certainty. It creates procrastination disguised as prudence. It creates a life in perpetual waiting for a clarity that will never arrive. So with this fundamental not knowing, you practice something completely different. You don't try to eliminate it. You don't fight it. You don't wait for it to disappear before living. You practice radical presence. You practice being completely here in this specific moment, doing absolutely the best you can with the information you have now, without torturing yourself about all the infinite things you cannot know about the future. And this is not passivity. This is not giving up on planning or preparing sensibly. It is planning while keeping your hands open. It is preparing while recognizing that reality might not follow your script, no matter how well you plan. It is acting with total commitment while accepting that the final outcome is not under your control, that variables you cannot predict will influence how things unfold. And when you live like this, when you act without the neurotic need for guarantees, when you move even without knowing exactly where you are going, when you make decisions recognizing you might be wrong, but choosing anyway, you develop a completely different kind of confidence. Not the arrogant confidence that you know everything, not the confidence that everything will work out exactly the way you want, but a deep-rooted trust that you can handle whatever comes, that you are more resilient than you thought, more adaptable than you believed, more capable of navigating the unpredictable than you ever gave yourself credit for. Because every time you face the unknown and don't crumble, every time you navigate deep uncertainty and find a path even without a map, every time you make a decision without certainty and survive the consequences, whatever the outcome,
you are proving to yourself at a visceral level words cannot reach that you don't need to know everything to be okay. You are building internal, cellular evidence that you can trust yourself, not in your ability to predict and control everything, but in your ability to respond, to adapt, to discover, to grow through whatever life brings. And this trust, this confidence, forged in the fire of the real unknown, is completely different from the arrogance of "I know it all." It is humble, deeply humble, because it comes from recognizing your limitations, from accepting that you don't know, from admitting that you are doing the best possible with limited information.
It is flexible, incredibly flexible, because it is not based on rigid certainty that breaks when reality doesn't cooperate, but on the fluid ability to adjust as new information emerges. It is based not on fixed knowledge you accumulated and now protect defensively, but on a living capacity to learn, to grow, to change as needed. It is the confidence of a surfer, not a fortress builder. A surfer trusts not in their ability to control the wave, but in their ability to read the wave, to move with the wave, to maintain balance even when the wave does unexpected things. The fortress builder tries to create a structure that resists everything. And when the earthquake comes, the fortress crumbles. But the surfer dances with whatever comes. And here's something that will seem paradoxical, that the logical mind will struggle to understand. That the more you accept the unknown, the more you really know. Not more facts, not more accumulated information, not more knowledge in the conventional sense, but a deeper knowing, an understanding that comes not from data accumulation, but from being radically present with reality, as it is, not as you want it to be or think it should be. Because mental knowledge in the conventional sense, is always about the past. It is information collected in previous moments, categorized by existing frameworks, stored for memory, for future use. It is useful, it is necessary to function in a complex society, but it is fundamentally limited. It can only tell you about what has already happened, not about what is happening now in its unique novelty, not about what might happen in a future that could be radically different from any past. Mental knowledge operates through comparison. It sees a new situation and asks, what does this look like from things I already know? And then applies patterns from the past to the present. And that works when the present is sufficiently similar to the past. But when you are in truly new territory, when the present is radically different from anything that came before, mental knowledge gets confused. It tries to force the new situation into old categories and often misses completely because it is seeing through inadequate lenses. But when you are genuinely present in the unknown, when you aren't trying to force the present moment to fit into patterns of past moments, when you have let go of the need to categorize and label and
understand everything through existing mental frameworks, you access a different kind of knowing, a knowing that is direct, immediate, unmediated by thought, unfiltered through memory and comparison. It is clear perception of what is, not what you think should be based on what was. It is seeing without the veil of concepts, without layers of interpretation, without the distortion of expectations and assumptions. It is how a child sees the world before learning all the names and categories. Fresh, new, vivid, direct. And this direct knowing, this clear, unmediated perception is only available when you let go of the need to know in the conventional sense. When you stop trying to understand everything mentally, to categorize everything, to make everything fit into existing frameworks. When you allow reality to be mysterious, surprising, new, even when it seems superficially familiar. And this is what Zen masters were pointing to with beginner's mind, or don't know mind. Not that you become ignorant in a sense of losing useful knowledge you have accumulated, but that you approach every moment as if it were the first time, without assuming you already know completely how it's going to be based on all the other times something similar happened. Because this moment, this specific configuration of factors, this unique intersection of you now with reality now has never existed before. It is genuinely new. And if you are seeing through the heavy lenses of past experiences, through the dense filters of expectations based on history, through assuming you already know because I've seen this before, you are not seeing this moment. You are seeing projection, memory, concept. You are seeing the past masquerading as the present. And you miss the radical novelty, the absolute uniqueness, the fresh possibility of this specific moment. But when you are truly in the unknown, when you have released your certainties about how things are and how they work and what will happen,
you can see clearly. You can perceive nuances that people with too much certainty completely miss. You can detect opportunities that people stuck in established patterns don't even notice. You can respond in creative, original ways perfectly suited to the specific situation, ways that people limited by the right way based on past experience would never consider. And this isn't just a philosophical or spiritual advantage, it is a massive practical advantage. You become more effective in navigating the real complexity of life, more responsive to change, more capable of seeing things as they are instead of how you want them to be or think they should be. More capable of learning quickly because you aren't stuck defending what you already know. More capable of collaborating because you aren't insisting that your way is the only right way. Life is complex, incredibly, irreducibly complex. Reality is multidimensional with infinite variables interacting in ways no mind can completely map. And the more you try to force this complexity into simple maps, into reductive explanations, into rigid categories, the more you distort what is actually happening.
the more you lose crucial information, the more your actions are based on an impoverished model of a rich reality. But when you allow the unknown to be unknown, when you don't need to simplify everything into something you can mentally control, when you can hold complexity without collapsing or trying to force it into inadequate structures, you can dance with it. You can move with change instead of being broken by change. You can respond to what is actually here instead of what you think should be here based on your mental maps. If you're feeling this, if something in you is recognizing that maybe it's time to let go of the desperate need to know everything, to control everything, to have certainty about everything before allowing yourself to live, share this video, not for me, but because there is someone in your life, maybe someone you love deeply, who is completely paralyzed by a need for certainty that will never come, who is waiting for clear signs, for absolute guarantees, for detailed maps before moving. And they need to hear that it is possible to move, create, live, flourish, even especially in the midst of the deepest unknown. That the unknown is not an enemy to be avoided, but a portal to be walked through. And here is something that might sound strange, might seem contradictory, but is deeply true. The more you accept the unknown, the more you really live. Not less. The mind convinces you of the opposite. The mind says that if you let go of certainty, if you stop trying to control everything, if you admit you don't know, you will live less, experience less, achieve less, that you will be paralyzed by uncertainty. But the opposite is true. Because when you're stuck in the need to know before acting, in the need to have certainty before moving, in the need for guarantees before trying, you don't act. You wait and keep waiting for clarity that never comes, for certainty that doesn't exist, for the perfect moment that never arrives. And years pass, decades pass, and you realize you spent a life waiting for perfect conditions that never materialized, for clear signs that never appeared, for guarantees that were never offered. And you lived very little, not because you didn't have opportunities, but because you were waiting for certainty before taking them. But when you accept the unknown, when you let go of the need to know completely before acting, when you allow yourself to move even with incomplete information, even with an uncertain outcome, you live. You really live. You try things. You experiment. You fail, sometimes spectacularly. But you also discover, you create, you transform, you have adventures that people safe in the known will never have. You have relationships that demand vulnerability that people who need guarantees will never risk. You create things that require jumping without a complete safety net. You experience life in its wild, messy, unpredictable fullness instead of just in its domesticated, controllable, safe parts.
And yes, you will get hurt sometimes. Yes, you will fail. Yes, you will take decisions that in retrospect you might wish you had made differently. But you will live.
Really live. And in the end, when you look back on your life, you will have stories. You will have growth. You will have transformation. You will have evidence that you were really here, really participated, really danced with the mystery of existence, instead of having just a safe, predictable, controlled life where nothing particularly bad happened, but also nothing particularly alive, nothing particularly transformative, nothing particularly true happened. A life lived in perpetual survival mode, a life of perpetual waiting for a right moment that never comes. So when you wake up at 3 in the morning, like you are right now, and the unknown is confronting you in all its vastness, when you feel lost, without a clear direction, without certainty about the next step, without a reliable map, without guarantees, don't panic. Don't immediately try to build a new map, a new structure of certainty, a new set of false guarantees just to calm a terrified ego. Stay. Breathe into this space of not knowing, and allow the unknown to be exactly what it is. Vast, mysterious, full of possibilities you cannot yet see, full of potential futures that can only exist if you don't insist that the future looks like the past, full of life's capacity to create, to surprise, to reorganize itself in ways no mind can predict. And trust, even when every survival instinct is screaming for you to create certainty now, that the path will reveal itself. Not all at once, not in the form of a 10-year plan with every detail mapped, but step by step, moment by moment, breath by breath. And every step you take without absolute certainty, every move you make based on deep intuition instead of guaranteed mental knowledge, every decision you take recognizing you might be wrong, but choosing anyway because standing still is worse, you are proving to yourself that you can, that you are capable, that you don't need to know everything to live well. That the unknown is not an enemy to be defeated, but a dance partner to embrace. Because, in the end, and you know this deep down, even when the ego protests, life has always been unknown. From the moment you were born, without having chosen to be born, without having asked to be here, without knowing what being alive would mean, you have been in the unknown. You just built elaborate structures of certainty to feel safe. You just created detailed maps to have the illusion of control. You just pretended you knew to soothe the existential fear of being in a mystery you didn't ask for and can't completely understand. And now, at 3 in the morning, when defenses are low and the truth is naked, you have a rare opportunity. The opportunity to stop pretending, to admit not knowing, to let go of the need for impossible certainty, to embrace the mystery you have always been part of, to live authentically as a being who doesn't know, who never knew, who never will know completely, but who can live beautifully, fully, courageously anyway. And this isn't weakness. This isn't giving up. This isn't defeatist resignation. This is the deepest possible courage.
The courage to live without guarantees, the courage to move without certainty, the courage to love without knowing if it will be returned, the courage to create without knowing if it will be appreciated, the courage to choose without knowing if it's right, the courage to trust that you and life together, in a mysterious partnership you cannot fully explain, will figure out a way. Even when you cannot see beyond the next step, even when the next step seems to be on the edge of an abyss. And you know what's most beautiful about all this? When you finally let go, when you finally accept the unknown, when you finally stop fighting against the fundamental nature of reality, you don't become less capable. You become more capable. You don't live less, you live more. You experience less, you experience deeper, more completely, more vividly, because you are no longer dividing your energy between living and trying to predict the future. You are no longer half present because the other half is trying to predict the future. You are all here, all present, all alive. And that total presence, that willingness to be completely here, even without knowing what comes next, that is real courage. That is real strength. That is real wisdom. Not the wisdom of having all the answers, but the wisdom of knowing you don't need all the answers. The wisdom of trusting the process even when you don't understand the process. The wisdom of dancing with the mystery instead of trying to dissect it to death. The unknown is not where you get lost. The unknown is where you stop pretending you know and start living. Really living. Without scripts, without guarantees, without complete maps, but with something much more valuable, total presence, with the infinite, wild, unpredictable, absolutely sacred mystery of being alive. And when you live like this, when you really live like this, you realize that you never wanted certainty. You wanted adventure. You never wanted control. You wanted participation. You never wanted to know everything. You wanted to be surprised, transformed, taken to places you could never have imagined. And the unknown? This vast space we try so hard to avoid offers exactly that. It offers life instead of existence. It offers growth instead of stagnation. It offers infinite possibility instead of finite repetition. All you have to do is stop fighting, stop resisting, and finally enter.